In this lesson, we'll take an introductory look at algebraic translations questions. So what are algebraic translations? Algebraic translations are situations in which our concern is going from verbal relationships into mathematical ones. This is the foundation for all word problems. Our real concern is take these words and convert them to algebra. So to do so, really what we want to do is take a paragraph, find relationships, put them in algebraic form, and then solve. Now in this lesson, we're going to implement this methodology on a fairly straightforward question. This question that we will look at will be about as easy as algebraic translations will get on the GMAT. That being said, it's worthwhile to look at this question because what we really want to focus on is the appropriate methodology here. We'll look at the methodology in a simpler situation, and then as we move on through this concept, we'll look at more advanced applications of this approach. So let's take a look at the question. A piece of wood 60 feet long is cut into two pieces. If one piece is 16 feet shorter than the other piece, what is the length in feet of the longer piece? Our first step here is to understand the question. Now, in this question, there are three relevant considerations. We have a 60-foot piece of wood. We know that the piece of wood is cut into two pieces, and our goal is to determine the length of the longer piece. Now that we've understood the question, our next step is to identify unknowns. So what is an unknown? An unknown is any quantity in the question that has an unspecified value. So examples of unknowns would be Bob's age, Karen's height, Jack's salary, and so on. In all these instances, we have some quantity that has a corresponding value, but we don't know what that value is. In this case, the unknowns are the lengths of the pieces of wood. So the length of the shorter piece of wood and the length of the longer piece of wood. Once we've determined the unknowns, the next step is to assign variables to the unknowns. Now, this idea of assigning variables is essential because this is going to help us go from words to algebra. So we know the unknowns here are the length of the shorter piece and the length of the longer piece. So we'll let the length of the shorter piece equal S and let the length of the longer piece equal L. Now we could have used X and Y here or A and B and so on, but we use S and L because these variables are representative of the unknowns that they correspond to. So we use S for shorter and L for longer. Now, after we've assigned variables, our next step is to create algebraic relationships. Creating algebraic relationships means constructing actual mathematical equations from the information in the question. So where will we get this information? Well, we're told that the piece of wood is 60 feet long. If it's 60 feet long and it's cut into two pieces, then we know that the sum of the lengths of the pieces equals 60. So we can create the equation L plus S equals 60. Next, we have the relationship that one piece is 16 feet shorter than the other piece. So this concerns a relationship between the lengths of the pieces. Well, we know that the longer piece is 16 feet longer than the shorter piece. So we can create the second equation, L equals S plus 16. Now that we've created these two equations, our next step is to solve. So to solve, we're going to use the substitution method. We'll substitute S plus 16 in the second equation for L in the first equation and arrive at the equation S plus 16 plus S equals 60. Simplify, and we'll get 2S plus 16 equals 60. Subtract 16 from both sides, and we'll get 2S equals 44. Divide both sides by 2, and we'll get S equals 22. So it would appear that the answer is C. However, recall that our goal in this question was not to determine the length of the shorter piece. Our goal was to determine the length of the longer piece. So our final step here is to confirm our answer. And so our answer right now will be wrong. We will be falling for a trap. So now what we want to do is take this value that we arrived at for S and use that to determine L. And so to figure out L, well, we know in the second equation that L equals S plus 16. So now we'll take the value of 22 for S and substitute it into that equation and arrive at the equation L equals 22 plus 16, which gives us a value of 38. So the correct answer is actually D. So, to summarize, to perform an algebraic translation, your goal is to convert from words to algebra. To do so, we'll take the following steps. Understand the question, identify unknowns, assign variables to the unknowns, create algebraic relationships with those variables, solve for the goal, and confirm your answer.